Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're hearing today from Bhagavad Gita as it is, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, chapter 14, text number 27. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, Brahmana hi patistaham amritasya vyasya cha. Sasvatasya Chadharmasya Sukaisya Kanti Kashyaja. 1 second. And chapter 14, text number 27. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishable eternity, and happiness. Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization. Paramatma, the supersoul, is the middle, the second stage in transcendental realization. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. It is explained in the 7th chapter that material nature is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord impregnates the inferior material nature with fragments of the superior nature, and that is the spiritual touch in the material nature. When a living entity conditioned by this material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. This attainment of Brahman conception of life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position, but he is not actually perfect in Brahman realization. If he wants, he can continue to stay in a Brahman position and then gradually rise up to Paramatma realization and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of this in Vedic literature. The 4 Kumaras were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of truth. But then they gradually rose to the platform of devotional service. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further, with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is a chance of falling down if one is not engaged in devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic language, it is also said, Rasovai sa rasam hi evayam labda, labdyan nandi bhavati. Labdyan nandi bhavati. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.7.1. The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on an almost equal level with the king. And so, eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, and eternal life accompany devotion service. Therefore, realization of Brahman or eternity or impersonality is included in devotional service. This is already proposed, this is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. The living entity, although Brahman by nature, has the desire to lord it over the material world. And due to this, he falls down. In its constitutional position, a living entity is above the 3 modes of material nature. But association with material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Due to the association of these 3 modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated in the transcendental position. And his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. Therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering, the prescribed 9 methods for realizing devotional service, should be practiced in the association of devotees. Gradually, by such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the Lord's transcendental loving service. This method is prescribed from the 22nd to the last verse of this chapter. Devotional service to the Lord is very simple. One should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the deity, smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, read the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with his devotees, chant always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and observe fasting days commemorating the appearances and disappearances of the Lord and his devotees. By following such processes, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahma Jyoti, or the different varieties of the Brahman conception, is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the matter of the three modes of material nature. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the three modes of material nature. Now we're going to chapter 15, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. It's also the Purushottama Yoga. Okay. Text number 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdvam Mulam Ada Sakham Asvatam Prakut Avyayam Chandamsi Yasyaparnani Yastam Vedatsa Sa Vedavit. The Supreme Personality of God has said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches downward. And its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Second. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who has engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end, and for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches, representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, or Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward. But there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir. We can see that trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. So this is what you would call the tree, the indestructible tree of illusion. And the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to transcendental service of the Lord. Continuing, this tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of the material tree, and from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, and then the three gunas. Then the five gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta. Then the ten senses, Dasendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees. And the other 108 degrees constitutes the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. In other words, everything we're seeing now is not real. It's temporary. The Prakriti is the eternal energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, but it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If he knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Okay. Text number 2. Adhas kordvam prasritas tasisaka guna pavrida vishaya pravala adhascha mulani anusantatani karman ubandini manusya loke. The branches of the tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of the human society. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses. And by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on. The sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachment and aversion, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmaloka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma, or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities. Text number 3 and 4. Na rupam ayeha tato palabhyate, nanto na kadir na cha sampratista, aswatam enam su viruddha mulam, asanga shastrena judena chitva, tata padam tat par, parimargita yam, yasmin gata na nivartanti bhuyam. Tam eva kadyam purusham prapadye yata pavriti prasrita purani. The real form of the tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where it is foundation, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Therefore, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father. My father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodaksha Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality, and by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection because attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place whence, having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain favor of that personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and thus is a result. And this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava matak sarvam pravartate itivam pajanti mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. Text number 5. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosa adhyatma nitya vinivritta ama dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha samjanair gachanti amudha padam avyayam tat. Those who are, translation, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride, because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature. It is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions. such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Interesting. Very interesting. Let me read this again. After this, it says, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text number 6. Natad Basayate Suryo. Na sasanko na pavaka. Yadgatva na nivartante. Tadama paramam mama. That supreme abode of mind is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or nature. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. How much time do we have left?
15 minutes.
How much?
7:45. So we have to leave now.
Are we finished?
Yeah, after this, maybe we can leave.
Because it's a very long purport.
Yeah, so we can wait. Maybe.
We'll just stop now.
Yeah.
Okay, my dear devotees, we'll stop here. Our takeaway for today is the following. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society. And they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affection. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. One second. Hare Krishna, all grace Prabhupada. I'm just finishing the class. Okay, so where are we?
To take away.
One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the personality of Godhead. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, well, that was our takeaway for today. And are there any questions? Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Haribol.
Please accept my humble obeisance. I
Ditto.
would like to ask one question here. In the purport in text 5 at the bottom where it says one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. My question is, what is his own and what is actually not his own?
Very good question. The only thing we actually own is our devotional service. That's the only thing that we own. The service that we render to serve, to please Krishna. Everything else we don't own. So if you ask me, what does it mean to let's see, where is that? People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, what it's saying here, when we become completely free from all false conceptions, such as this is my country, this is my car, this is my house, this is my family, this is my this, my that. When one gives up all those false conceptions and understands, I don't own anything. The only thing I have is the ability to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and glorify Krishna by his holy name and his pastimes. So that's what the devotee owns. The ability to chant the names of Krishna and understand the pastimes of Krishna. Because those two things are eternal. Everything else, owning a house, having a family, building a skyscraper, they're all temporary things. And they'll come and they'll be built and then they'll deteriorate and then they'll be destroyed. So therefore, the only thing is that we own we own the devotional service that we're rendering to the Lord, because that is eternal and it'll never be taken away from us. And therefore, that's why it says here, people are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society. And they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such false notion, from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. So the faulty associations, what are they? Oh, I am American. No, I am Mexican. No, I am South American. These are all false concepts. But people want to identify themselves with these false concepts. And while they are thinking like that, they cannot make any real, tangible spiritual association. It's only when the devotee realizes, I don't own anything. The only thing I have is my bead bag and chanting Hare Krishna. That's my only possession.
Hare Krishna.
Okay? And therefore, the devotee is free from illusion because he's always chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and completely depending on the mercy of Krishna. And he's happy. He's not trying to become a millionaire. He's not trying to become a a person who goes to the highest mountain or the lowest ocean. He's not the highest. He's not the lowest. He is always engaged in devotional service. Therefore, he doesn't have to go anywhere here or there. Wherever he is, he simply engages in devotional service and surrenders to the Krishna through the devotional service, and was always kind and gentle to the devotees, and is also very merciful to the ignorant people, and try to help them understand what is real and what is not real. Therefore, it says, one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own. Well, what is actually his own is the bead bag that we use to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. That's the only thing that we actually can own. Everything else, and even that belongs to Krishna. But Krishna has given us the opportunity to have that bead bag and to chant Hare Krishna. After that, when it says so when it says one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. Well, nothing is our own. Everything belongs to Krishna. And we only temporarily have things, such as houses and cars and all those things. We don't actually own those things, but we can use them for a certain period of time. But we should not be attached to them because they're temporary. On the other hand, chanting Hare Krishna, you can own it because it's eternal and it'll never go away. So by chanting the holy names of the Lord, you own those, let's say, sincere chanting. You actually own it because you're glorifying the Lord, and the Lord is accepting the glorification that you're giving him. So you can own that, but you don't own anything else. Everything else is temporary, and it's going to begin, have a middle, and an end, and you end up with nothing. Whereas all the time, all the chanting you do in your lifetime for the pleasure of Krishna is an asset that you can never lose. And it keeps you aloof from all the grossness of the material world. And you always continue chanting, and that takes you back to the spiritual world. That is something real. Everything else is illusory. Why? Because you have these things like cars and houses and families. You have them for a certain time. And then they all deteriorate or die. And now you end up with nothing. But chanting Hare Krishna, you can actually own it because it's eternal. And it's always going to keep you out of difficulty because you have complete faith in chanting the holy names and glorifying Krishna. That is eternal. Okay. So it says here, one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. Well, the only thing we actually may own is our bead bag and the beads. And we chant on our beads every day. So we own it. And it will take us back to Godhead if we do it on a regular basis. And then it says one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress. Well, yeah, we have an understanding of things as they are. We know that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore we should use everything in the service of Krishna. That's the understanding of things as they are. And because of that, one becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. It doesn't matter what condition we're in, as long as we're chanting the holy names of the Lord, the condition might be good, it might not be good, it might be nice, it might be horrible. It doesn't affect us because we're associating with Krishna through the vibration of the holy name. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress. Well, one has an understanding of things as they are, that means you understand that everything belongs to Krishna. That's things as they are. Everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore everything should be used for the glory of Krishna. Now, we don't own anything, but we know who is the actual owner. Krishna is. And therefore, we cultivate this knowledge of what is actually our own thing. Our own thing is glorification of the Lord. That's something that we can own. So it says one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions, such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, when you understand everything belongs to Krishna, and Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one is equal to him, no one is greater than him, everyone is subordinate to him, then he engages in full, he or she engages in full devotional service without any false conception of this is mine or I own this. No, what we own is the only thing we own is our bead bag and our beads, and we chant on them every day, and we take care of them, and that puts us directly in touch with Krishna. So that is the understanding of things as they are. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are all subordinate to the Lord, and by His mercy, we have the opportunity to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and have a simple life of devotional service without hankering all the time for sense gratification. Then we're free. And because we're completely surrendered to Krishna and very happy because we are not confused anymore about who we are and what is the real purpose of life. Okay, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? Any questions or comments? Okay, so when we are completely surrendered to Krishna, we are no longer disturbed by dualities such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain, because we're full in knowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and I am the eternal servant of the Lord. Then we are free from these dualities of life, pleasure and pain, happiness and distress, and so forth. And we can surrender completely to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. That is our freedom from duality. Duality is a terrible thing. But when we have one purpose, and that is to serve Krishna with love and devotion, we are liberated from duality. And we can express our love for Krishna every day without any obstacle. Okay, we will stop right there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna,
Krishna.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
Happy.
Happy.